Welcome to the Cedar Park United podcast. Lent is a spiritual journey of prayer, honesty, and renewal. We remember both our fragility and our belovedness. Though the journey may sometimes feel solitary, we do not walk it alone. Jesus goes before us, leading us on the way that leads to life. On this first Sunday of Lent, Pastoral Minister Jessica Gauthier invites us to consider that this season is not meant for us to change who we are by sheer effort or spiritual achievement. Rather, it's a season that reveals who we already are, beloved children of God, learning again to trust the one who leads us.
This week, something unexpected happened to me. It's not what you think. There was the big ordination interview. But this thing was different. I sat down in my office after having spent much of the day working in what I call lovingly my grow up. It's a room that I have upstairs full of almost 10,000 watts equivalency of LED grow lights, where I have already started my tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, begonias, etc. Beans. Yeah. So I sat down in my office and it was time to work on something else, and had lots of things that I could have been doing, but instead, I found myself writing. I used to do a lot of writing, and then these last few days, months, years, other priorities have taken over. But this felt more like being led or driven than choosing to do something. And I couldn't stop until I had finished at least the first draft. So when I finally came to the end around 3:30 in the morning, many hours had passed, and what emerged was a very small Lenten devotional, for now almost a calendar, shaped by questions rather than answers. And only afterwards did I realize how fitting this thing that had happened to me was for the beginning of Lent. In the morning on Ash Wednesday, I had this big interview, and then all of these Ash Wednesday things happened. And then I did some gardening, and then this strange thing drove me into my office. And today's gospel begins in a similar way. Jesus does not wander into the wilderness by accident. He is led there by the Spirit. And the Spirit is not leading him to comfort or clarity. The Spirit leads Jesus into wilderness, into testing, into temptation. What do you hear when I say that word? Many of us imagine moral failure. We think of forbidden desire, personal weakness, something shameful. But in Scripture, temptation or testing often means something different. It's a revealing, a testing of mettle. It's a moment when the truth of who we are comes into focus. Later in this service, like just about every service, we will pray. Lead us not into temptation. Some traditions, Christian traditions, will render that. Save us from the time of trial, or leave us not in temptation. Temptation, testing, trial, perhaps those things are actually closer than we think. Because temptation is not always about wanting the wrong thing. Sometimes it is about being brought face to face with the deepest questions of our lives. There is a resident at the long-term care residence where I serve as a spiritual care professional who comes faithfully to worship just about every Sunday. And when we reach that line of the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, they raise their hand and say, "Can I ask a question?" And over time, this person's questions have shaped our worship together. About a year ago, maybe a bit more, we began praying the Lord's Prayer in many different versions and paraphrases, listening more carefully to words many of us had learned simply to recite, because they ask quite sincerely, why would God lead us into temptation? And it is not a disruptive question. It's not. It's a faithful question from a faithful person. And it is the question, I believe, Lent asks of all of us. Why does the journey of faith so often begin in wilderness? And I wonder if that's why Lent begins not with answers, but with questions. So the little calendar I found myself writing this week begins with 5 questions. I'm going to tell you what they are. They're not instructions. They're not resolutions. They're just questions to hold on the way. We're on day 5, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we're also in a way on day 1, because Lent is a journey that we keep entering. So the calendar begins with 5 questions, and I believe that these are for us to live with rather than questions to solve. And the first question is, what kind of fast? Like that reading we heard last Sunday, right, from Isaiah. Is this the fast? Is this the kind of fast you think I want? What kind of fast? Jesus is hungry in the wilderness, but a deeper question might be about what really sustains life and what can we release when we turn to God. And then the second question asks, what do we truly need? The wilderness strips away all of our certainty and control. And what remains is trust that God gives enough for this day. And then the third question, the one we were asking ourselves on Friday, some of us, if we're following social media, it asks, who are we? Who are we? Not what is my role, what have I achieved, just ourselves standing honestly before God. And then we have a fourth question, who leads us? The temptation in the wilderness, it's not only hunger or fear. It's the temptation to grasp power, or if you like, control, to prove ourselves and lead ourselves rather than follow the Spirit. And finally, the fifth day, today, a question which we will deepen in 5 or 6 weeks towards the end of Lent. Who walks with us? Who goes with us? Because even Jesus in the wilderness is not alone. The Spirit leads him, and the Word, not bread alone, but the Word sustains him. And in the end, angels come and serve him. The wilderness does not give Jesus ever. Think about this story. It never gives Jesus any new information. All it does is reveal who he truly is, who he already is. And I think this might be true for us as well. Lent, it's not a season that's meant to change who we are by sheer effort or spiritual achievement. It's a season that reveals who we already are. We are beloved children of God. We're learning, again, to trust the one who leads us. I'm thinking now of Bettelheim. I wasn't going to mention him because I don't want to be misunderstood. But I think of him sometimes because I think sometimes we try very hard to explain stories like this. So we take the story of Jesus tempted in the wilderness and we analyze it and we interpret it and try to extract lessons from it and we try to solve the puzzle. But I don't think that faith stories are tests that we have to pass. I think they're invitations to enter the story and pay attention and notice what sustains us. Notice what we really need. Notice who leads us. Notice who's walking beside us. And if we rush to explain the wilderness, we may never actually walk in it. Century after century, Christians have told this wilderness story at the beginning of Lent. Because before we do anything, before we prove anything, before we understand anything, God has already prepared a table. And after the testing and the hunger and the questions, angels come and they serve Jesus. He's not alone. He never was. The Spirit led him there. The Word sustained him there. And God remained with him there. Because the wilderness is not abandonment. It is encounter. So I just want to remind you, the last time, not that I worshiped with you, because I've been able to worship with you a few times since then, but the last time I was able to preach from this pulpit was the beginning Epiphany and the baptism of Christ. And we heard a voice from heaven say, "This is my beloved." And those words came before the miracles and before the teaching and before the crowds. The belovedness comes first. So we get another chance to be reminded of that. And maybe it's the very hardest thing for us to trust. At this table, very soon, we're going to pray together. That in that same prayer, we'll pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." And we will receive that bread. And it won't be because we passed a test. And it won't be because we got to answer the story correctly. And it won't be because we have finally achieved spiritual success. We will be welcomed to the table because God meets us in an economy of gift. God meets us as we are, hungry and searching and beloved, and God feeds us for the journey. So we are led by the Spirit and fed by the Word and sustained by grace, and we can trust that even in wilderness, God is already preparing a table for us. Thanks be to God.
Thank you for listening to the Cedar Park United podcast. If it inspired you, or comforted you, or even ruffled your feathers in a good way, please consider leaving a positive rating or subscribing to help others find their way here too. It matters.